The president was up early this morning, apparently Googling himself, and he was definitely not pleased with the results. He tweeted, quote, Google's search results for Trump news shows only the viewing reporting of fake news media, calling it rigged. He goes on to accuse the search engine of suppressing voices of conservatives and says, quote, this is a very serious situation, will be addressed. Google fired back just in the past hour saying, quote, when users type queries into the Google search bar, our goal is to make sure they receive the most relevant answers in a matter of seconds. Search is not used to set a political agenda and we don't bias our results toward any political ideology. All right, joining me now is NBC News senior business reporter Ben Popkin, who is really our expert on these things. I don't know what to think about this. On one hand, when the president says will be addressed, I think I don't want the president anywhere near this president or any other president addressing what I get in my search results. But I'm not 100% sure I believe that Google doesn't meddle with stuff, given everything we've talked about in the last year. What do you make of this kerfuffle?
Well, there's a lot of things kind of percolating around here. You know, Larry Kudlow said we're looking into it when asked on the White House lawn, but it turns out that he said it also might be above his pay grade. So it's uncertain. Maybe we'll hear later from Sarah Sanders what he might mean by that, if that means regulating Google.
Because for all the problems we've had on Facebook and Twitter and Google, what we haven't had is presidential executive office, executive branch involvement in it. We're talking about whether Congress might get involved in regulating certain things, but it's about regulating an industry, not a company.
This all stems from a larger kind of talking point that's been happening, and almost ironically, it's come out of concern about fake news, about Russian trolls, about how algorithms and search engines and platforms are using these algorithms to push information in front of us, sometimes high quality information and sometimes divisive and exploitive information. So what's happening here is that Trump is saying that these algorithms are now biased and they're not showing his news, the news that he likes to read in it.
And do we have any evidence of that? I mean, first of all, I don't know if the president was Googling this himself, or that did he see this on Fox News?
We don't know the genesis of it.
Right, we don't know where the came.
But we can note the night before on Fox Business News, Lou Dobbs, who was citing statistics that he got from a conservative blogging network, where the author there had done this little test running on two computers, tried searching Trump on two different computers, and said, you know, there's not enough right-leaning sites in these top results. And they're saying, this is evidence that Google is being biased towards against right-leaning sites. Google says no. You know, we're ranking based on authoritativeness. That's what they've said, and that's what search engine experts say. And it's not based on viewpoint, experts say. It's based on how many sites link in, how trustworthy are they? Are they using a large amount of original content? Are they citing their sources, or are they repurposing things that they got from other places?
But again, we don't have any scientific understanding of that algorithm. We've got what Google says versus what the president says at the moment.
Well, Google's algorithm is a black box. They have given us clues about it, and we can see the evidence also of how it performs. And different people have become experts, even though it is a black box.
Right.
And we do have signs of how it works, and the signs are not that it's politically biased. And we also have to think about this from just an economic standpoint. Google's goal is to be the best Google, the best Google it can be. If it starts showing results that are either skewed left or as these voices would like, include more right voices as opposed to what the user is searching for, well, then people are going to stop using Google because it's not giving them what they want. So the market is enforcing things that are ranked based on quality and authoritativeness, not any kind of political spectrum.
Hey, MSNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there and click on any of the videos here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. You can get more MSNBC for free every day with our newsletters. Just visit msnbc.com/newsletters to sign up now.